Good morning, everyone. In this week's Torah portion, we have the observance of Rosh Chodesh. And the Torah says that God says on the day of Rosh Chodesh, you shall bring a goat as a sin offering, La Hashem, for God. And Rashi asks, why do we need to bring an atonement, a sin offering for God? And the answer, fascinatingly, is that God says, I need to ask for atonement from the moon. Chodesh is the holiday that celebrates the renewal of the moon. And God says in the beginning of creation, originally this moon and the sun were of the same size and the same power of light on earth. But then God diminished the size of the moon and the light of the moon to be a reflection of the light of the sun. And therefore God says, every Rosh Chodesh I ask for forgiveness from the moon for having diminished its size. And the fascinating and profound lesson is that God is saying, yes, I needed to minimize the size of the moon for a reason, but still I empathize with the moon. Because sometimes in life, in order for God to make a perfect world, there has to be imperfections. And therefore, God says, I sympathize with your pain, moon, and I ask for your forgiveness. In life, sometimes we go through struggles and challenges, and it's for a greater good. It's for a purpose. You can't have a world and experience love if there's no hate in the world. You cannot experience peace if there's no conflict. You cannot experience the joy of giving if there's no need in the world. And so therefore, for God to make a perfect world, there has to be some imbalances. The moon has to be smaller than the sun, but at the same time, God asks for forgiveness from the moon. There's a rabbi, his name is Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson. He's a renowned scholar and lecturer, and he tells a story that he was once invited to spend Shabbat in a community and be the scholar in residence in the New York area. And 6 hours before Shabbat, the rabbi calls him and says, I'm sorry, but I have to cancel. He says, I already made plans for Shabbat. My kids were going to stay by my parents. I don't have food for Shabbat. I was coming to you. How could you cancel 6 hours before? The rabbi said, I'm sorry, something came up. There's nothing I can do. The rabbi was quite upset, but what could he do? His wife went out shopping, and he started to prepare for Shabbat. Friday night, they have a beautiful Shabbat dinner, and the kids go to sleep, and the rabbi stays up to study. It's 1 a.m. and he's studying, and all of a sudden he comes across a subject in a passage, and he needs to look up something in a certain book. But he didn't have the book in his apartment on the first floor of the building. But on the fourth floor of the building, he had an office, and he had that book in his office. He decided he would go up to get the book. So 1 a.m. he leaves his apartment, and because it's Shabbat, he's not going to take the elevator, he takes the stairwell. As he's climbing the stairwells, he turns the floor, and he sees a teenager sitting on the stairs at 1 o'clock, crying, a religious kid. He sits down next to him. He says, what's the matter? The kid says, leave me alone. He says, tell me what's wrong. He doesn't want to talk to him. Finally, the kid opens up and says, I got into another fight with my parents. I'm having trouble with my parents, and I ran away to the house. Rabbi Jacobson says, come, let me talk to you. Come to my apartment. The kid just kept on telling him to leave him alone. Finally, the kid gets up and starts running up the steps. Rabbi Jacobson runs after him. And the kid runs up to the rooftop, pushes open the door. Rabbi Jacobson runs after him. He sees the way the kid takes out a bottle of pills from his pocket, opens up the lid, and he's about to overdose on these pills. Rabbi Jacobson pushes the young man, slaps the bottle out of his hand. The pills go flying on the floor, and the young man starts wrestling with the rabbi. Thank God the rabbi was stronger. He overpowered him to the ground. And at that point, the boy just burst out crying. And he started to embrace Rabbi Jacobson. Rabbi Jacobson said, come with me down to my apartment. He took him downstairs to his apartment. They sat up for hours talking about all of his pain, all of his struggles, until finally the boy, like 3 a.m., fell asleep on his couch. Rabbi Jacobson fell asleep alongside him on the couch. In the morning when he woke up, Rabbi Jacobson said to his wife, listen, I'm going to run to synagogue, daven quickly in a fast minyan. I'll be back. Just keep an eye on this young man. Came back 2 hours later, spent the whole Shabbat with him, counseling and talking to him, comforting him, loving him, embracing him. At the end of Shabbat, he got called some professionals that he knows in the community, therapists, put him in touch to get the professional help he needs. And now this young teenager is a young man who's a thriving member of the community. Rabbi Jacobson says he always tells his wife, you realize that if that Shabbaton engagement had not been canceled, this young man may not have been alive today. In life, sometimes we encounter challenges. We say, God, why do we have to have these imperfections, these struggles? But God was saying to Rabbi Jacobson, I need you to hear this Shabbat. You have a more important task to take care of. And therefore, I'm sorry that I canceled your plans. I'm sorry, moon, that I had to make you smaller. But trust Hashem's bigger picture plan and the reason for why it was necessary. Have a wonderful day.